Good morning, everyone. Oh, I love a little good morning back. Thank you. You do that with students. You're like, good morning, good morning. I want to welcome you all here this morning. I'm sure the clouds are going to clear. It's a really exciting day, and you guys are starting it off right with a great breakfast and an inspirational speech by Dr. Kathryn Malone. But before we get to that, it's exciting to be here. Trailblazer Brunch. And it is my honor to introduce your keynote speaker, Kathryn R. Malone, Ph.D. Kathryn Malone, affectionately known as Doc, is celebrating her 25th year at Hill. Currently, the Elizabeth B. Blossom Chair of Humanities and Senior Master Teacher of Humanities. In her time at Hill, we'll need that later. In her time at Hill, she has held numerous roles, including instructor of history, director of studies for 8 years, dorm parent in Wendell, field hockey and lacrosse coach, and she has served as the official timer for both of those sports for a number of years. And as anyone who knows boarding school, you know that that is just probably touching the surface of all the different things that Kathy has done at Hill. Kathy grew up in nearby Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, and earned her BA from Yale University, where she was a member of Yale's inaugural women's lacrosse and field hockey teams. She returned to Philadelphia area to attend the University of Pennsylvania, where she earned her Ph.D. in American history in 1981. She then headed north to the Brooks School in Massachusetts, where she first made the happy switch to boarding school life, spending 11 years there before returning home to Pennsylvania and joining the Hill faculty in the fall of 1999. Now, one of the things it doesn't say in Kathy's bio is that she is also the honorary captain of Lawrenceville Weekend, hence the broom. So big round of applause. I would like to say that if I could think of it, I would have loved to have played on a team with Kathy Malone. Right, exactly. And I would have loved to have been in the classroom and have learned from her in that environment. But I am learning every day from her colleagueship, her mentorship, and I am so appreciative to be spending this time, my first year at Hill, in Kathy's presence and under her tutelage. So could we all please give a warm welcome to Dr. Kathryn Malone. You don't need this?
I'm very short, so I have to do that. Okay. Not everybody would think giving me a broom was entirely the wisest of symbols, but. Well, thank you, Kathleen, and thank you all for being here today. Thanks to everyone who made it possible. And it is really, really special to be here celebrating 25 years of girls' athletics at Hill. When I was asked to be the keynote speaker, sorry, when you're 4'11", there's nothing in the built environment that's meant for you. When I was asked to be the keynote speaker, I wasn't entirely sure why. I've been here a long time, and I thought, well, if you hang around long enough, you get asked to do everything eventually. But, and I'm not, believe me, those of you who know me, false modesty is not one of my problems. Last night, we honored some women inducted in the Hall of Fame who really belong there. One of whom is Deanna's with us today. Quite a number of the 2002 field hockey team are here. When I left the CFTA last night, waiting for me on my phone was, of course, a text from Shannon Summers-Sawyer, who had been following us all night. But I'm not one of them. And I'm not going to be, and I shouldn't be. But on the other hand, I did coach and teach a lot of those women. And I've been at Hill, as I said, for a quarter century, involved directly in field hockey and lacrosse much of that time as a coach, but also, I guess in retrospect, I'd have to say, as a coach of a lot of coaches. as a mentor, as someone who, God knows Jen Sparaccio-Lebo didn't really need it, but every so often Jen needed a little bit of someone to talk to and deal with, and we did a lot of that along the way. I think I'm here primarily, though, at least I'm approaching it as a historian, which I am. And I can offer, what I want to do today is offer some historical perspective, tell a few stories, and suggest the criteria by which we might judge how far girls' athletics have come at Hill over the past 25 years, and might also what might be some appropriate criteria for judging what our goals should be going forward, and what role I would hope Hill could play as a leader in American education as we look at the state of youth sports and youth education going forward at this point. Early in October 1999, I stood up in a faculty meeting. It was likely midway through a Wednesday morning, because that's when we had faculty meetings in those days. And certainly it was in the memorial room. It was only 1 month into my own Hill career. I was one of very few women in a sea of blue blazers and tweed jackets. I guess Margie would have been there too, and and Ellen, and that, not a whole lot else, but we were there. It would have been during roll call. One of the most wonderful things we do at Hill periodically at the end of a faculty meeting is everyone's name is called, and you have an opportunity to stand up and share a thought or make a comment or an announcement. And so what I wanted to share that day was that I wanted to offer them a little history lesson about field hockey in America, and I wanted to make it clear to all of them the distinguished place that the Hill program, still very early in its second year, had already earned in that history. I explained to my colleagues then, as I'm going to explain to you now, because teaching you history lessons is what I do, that about 100 years before then, around 1900, the great British field hockey evangelist, some of you know this story, Constance Appleby, this is the great creation myth of field hockey in America, came over from England, from one of the English boarding schools, to bring field hockey to America. And she chose, fortunately for all of us in this part of the country, to bring it to Bryn Mawr College. And because of that, that's to this day why southeastern Pennsylvania is the center of field hockey in the United States. There's no place else that has it quite like what we have here. But it's also why international, although it's an international game played by men and women at the highest levels, it's predominantly a female sport in the United States, because Bryn Mawr was where it started. But because, and those of you who are fellow Philadelphians know this, the three closest girls' schools to Bryn Mawr College are Baldwin and Shipley, which are literally across the street, and Agnes Irwin, which is a few miles down Lancaster Avenue. For those reasons, those are three of the oldest programs in the country in field hockey. Now, what that meant was I wanted my Hill colleagues to understand that in the previous 10 days, the Hill field hockey team of the fall of '99 had beaten Baldwin, Shipley, and Agnes Irwin. And yeah, I mean, that's a big deal. Now, Baldwin, Shipley, and Agnes Irwin were not quite as strong as they had been once upon a time, partly because Episcopal Academy and Germantown Academy had gone co-ed and had stolen some of the players. But still, the point was, the Hill School in a year, Jennifer Sparaccio in a year, had built a program that was not just on par, but even better. I'm looking right at you, Burbank. Even better than some of what were the teams that had set the mark in the sport in the country. That's how good those teams were. So it was wonderful to honor them last night. But I wanted my Hill faculty colleagues to know that, to know what Jennifer Sparaccio and those girls had done, because it mattered that they got the respect and the recognition that they had earned. And I knew that because I was already 45 by then, and I'd done some pioneering and trailblazing, and I knew how important it was to recognize what had been accomplished. Jennifer was furious with me afterwards. She was mortified, of course she was. But I said, yeah, well, but they need to know that about you. And your girls need that recognition, because that's what makes change possible. You have to recognize it, and you have to recognize excellence when it happens. And I'd learned that because that's one of my central messages today. Those of us who've had the privilege in participating in the process and of implementing significant change can only do so because of those who came before us and did the early rounds of heavy lifting, and can only continue, the change can only continue if you recognize the successes, but also recognize how much work it is and how exhausting it can be. And and those are a couple of things I want to talk about. Talk about some of the heavy lifting. I'm not going to do a lot of names today because I'm going to leave somebody out, and I don't really want to do that. But there are two names I really do want to mention today who were trailblazers at Hill before any of the rest of us females got here. God, I hope that's not my phone. One of whom is Marion Threadgill, who kept the whole thing running in the athletic office, and boy. And the other is a woman who is here with us this morning, Margie Ritchie Nicewender. Okay. You want to talk about trailblazing in female athleticism, people. This woman, 2 years out of Westchester, came to Hill when it was an all-boys school, and it was an all-boys school. She was head coach of tennis. Can you imagine being in your mid-20s and being the head tennis coach in a setting like that and pulling it off and earning the respect she did? That's trailblazing. And when I got here, one of the first people pointed out to me was Margie in her red Volvo convertible, bopping around. Yep, so. It was Saab, excuse me. It was a Saab, it was beautiful. That's right, okay. All right, so. I had arrived at Hill. This is all the wrong, you end up with trifocals at my age, it gets very complicated. Okay, all right, I had arrived at Hill and was one of the first residents, I literally was first resident of Del Dorm. I camped out in the guest house until we got an occupancy permit in August of '99. And I was really interested in coming to Hill. This was second year the girls were here. In no small part because I had also arrived in New Haven, Connecticut in September of 1972 as the member of the fourth class of women at Yale. Both projects attracted me as challenges likely to be fun, being really honest. And I was drawn by what I anticipated would be the fun. I played field hockey and lacrosse because they were fun. I studied history because it was fun. And my judgment turned out to be really right. The excitement and stimulation of the challenge of shaping the future of a heralded all-male educational institution that had recently added female students was something I thought would be really fun in 1972 and struck me as a really interesting challenge in 1999. My judgment, as I said, proved sound. It was fun to be at Yale then. Oh, believe me, there were 350 girls in my class and 1,000 boys. Yep. And we were the big class of women, so. And it's been really fun to be at Hill for the past 25 years. There have been some challenges, to say the least, but the enticing, intriguing task of building a new culture, a new way of being for so robustly traditional institutions as Yale and Hill has been all I imagined and more. Building on and maintaining the strengths of the past and integrating into and building on those strengths to build a new future and shaping that future in the ways that you hope would create excellence going forward. And athletics, women's athletics, was a big part of the story from the start in both cases. And I speak in that respect as someone who had the good fortune to experience organized athletics at just about the highest level possible for a woman of my generation in the games I played. And the point I'm going to make here is that I was able to play the role I've played at Hill, some of the role I played at Yale, because I wasn't a trailblazer earlier. I have one of my high school classmates is here today, one of the people who played on one of those undefeated teams. And God, thank you for showing up, Beth. We weren't trailblazers. We grew up in Swarthmore with some of those people taught by Constance Appleby. We had plaques on the wall of the field hockey, lacrosse, basketball, women's, girls' records. You call them girls. We were girls. We were 17 years old. Going back to the teens, Swarthmore had an undefeated lacrosse record against playing Shipley, Baldwin, Agnes Irwin, Friend Central, et cetera, that lasted 21 years. We weren't trailblazers, but we were able to go out and do some of the things we did subsequently because we weren't. Because we grew up in an atmosphere that supported and took as normal that girls were important, that it mattered, that girls' athletics was just as important, just as valued, just as supported as the boys. My brother, as some of you know from his years at Mercersburg, Jim's always pointed out that was partly because the girls' teams were always better than the boys' teams, which is true. So, okay. I've been actively involved in field hockey and lacrosse for 61 of my 69 years. I was taught to play and then coached by two of the greatest women to ever play both games, Joanne Harper and Alice Putnam Willits, both multi-year All-Americans in their college years, respectively at Westchester and Temple, U.S. team players and coaches, and just our luck, because I'm going to include Beth here, our junior high and high school gym teachers at Swarthmore High School. They were just there. There are very few people who are in both the USA Field Hockey and Lacrosse Halls of Fame. Josie and Putty happen to be among them. Those are the people that, again, this is a gift, and I want to recognize that. When Ms. Appleby came to the States to visit, which she did well into her 90s, I think, she stayed with Mrs. Willits in Swarthmore. Joanne Harper went on to be the U.S. World Cup coach and head coach at Dartmouth, and the first woman to be an athletic director in the Ivy League. This is just normal. These are the people we lived with. So we were really, really lucky. And so Trailblazers' work always has to be based on the people who came before. That's what gives you the strength and perhaps the ridiculous optimism to just think, well, of course, this is what you do. That's what you do. So I played on undefeated and untied teams in both sports in my senior year at Swarthmore High School. I went on to arrive at Yale in the September, as I said, a member, and started in the first varsity game played in any sport ever in the history of Yale. There are 11 women who can say that, and I am one of them. But I could do that because both the captain at Yale and the coach had graduated from Swarthmore High School. It never occurred to me that you did anything else at 3:30 in the afternoon but go play field hockey, because that's what I've been doing since I was 8. And again, this is extraordinary. And part of what makes the story at Hill possible is that we are in a place here, regionally, in which girls' sports has been valued and cared about. So we have been able to build on that even while we were building new programs at Hill. That didn't make it all easier, but it made it conceivably possible. The girls who played on that magnificent team we honored last night, the 2001-2002 field hockey team, didn't learn to play field hockey at Hill, people. You don't learn to play field hockey in a year. They came from some of those schools that I've already mentioned here. They came out of, and it was to Hill's credit, and one of Hill's strengths was we were able to draw those caliber women from this part of the world, and that made some of what happened there. So, I'm telling you this because, as I said, false modesty is not my problem, but I want to make the point that understanding the depth that we had to build on here is a piece of it. And when I arrived at Hill in the second year of coeducation, I had the joy and privilege of coaching Both, and I've coached all 3 levels of field hockey and lacrosse that we've had here, and enjoyed it. And I had the honor of being, somewhat accidentally, my 1 year as a head coach of lacrosse was also the year that we had our first winning season. And there's some people who played on that team in this room right now, too. So sports and women's sports have been a part of my story all the way along here. In fact, my clearest memory of my job interview day at Hill was meeting with the athletic director, Wayne Curtis, at that time, and someone known to Kathleen. And I think he was bemused by talking to a 45-year-old Ph.D. who voiced my interest in coaching field hockey and lacrosse, and who stated categorically that the only Hill located where it was, all that would prevent Hill from having really strong field hockey and lacrosse programs was poor coaching. All we needed to do, because we were here. Literally, we're here. You just had to get the right coaches and the right girls. I was hired, actually, to teach history, but field hockey and lacrosse were sort of side gigs, and that's where the Hill adventure began. And as was so dramatically displayed last evening in the CFTA, Hill's girls' sports thrived, pretty much across the board and the seasons. Soccer, water polo, cross country, field hockey, basketball, swimming and diving, squash, tennis, track and field, softball. Now, I just did a little thought experiment there. As I read those names, what did you envision, all of you? I didn't say girls water polo. I just said water polo. I didn't say girls soccer. I said Hill soccer. That's still part of what we need to be honest about. The default mode still is the male one. We're talking about the girls today, and so maybe it wasn't there, but I want to be clear about that. We're still, whatever it is we're building towards, we also want to be aware that there is, if you make a lunch announcement, anybody gets up to make a lunch announcement, it's inadvertent, and I'm in no way casting blame, but it's basketball or girls basketball. It's soccer. Varsity soccer has a game today. Varsity girls soccer has a game today. We've made a lot of progress, but we're still dealing with a world where those are the default modes. There's a lot of history here. And I'm not just saying, it's not as a criticism, but we have to be realistic about what we've accomplished and understand the context in which these pioneers have done what they've done, because it's so impressive. The last team to really, the lingerer team, the one we had the hardest time getting up to speed was probably girls lacrosse, actually. But fortunately, a lot of those girls who were inducted last night for that field hockey team played lacrosse that spring, and that was the spring that we managed to get our first winning season. So thank you all very much. Also, of course, my assistant coach was Jen Sparaccio that year, which didn't hurt either. And Shannon Summers was the third former on that team who scored the 2 goals against Springside. So it's a really impressive story. I don't know of any school that's probably done as well incorporating the girls' sports as Hill in many ways. So that's all it took, right? The girls arrived as students, we added a few more women to the faculty over the years, and all with sweetness and light and immediate success, and we've all lived happily ever after, and that's been the story of coeducation at the Hill School. Nah, you know that, okay. Yes, no, tremendous change has occurred. And the Hill of 2023 has not just changed, but progressed by almost any measure conceivable. Truly has. But if we're going to both celebrate those changes and learn from them, what we need to going forward, we also need to look honestly at the processes involved, including the costs incurred by those trailblazers themselves. And that's why it was so important to me back in 1999 to make sure Jennifer Sparaccio and that team got the credit they deserved. Because I knew by then, at age 45, that the success needs to be recognized and celebrated. Respect has to be earned, but it has to be, you can't earn it if people don't know what you've done, if you don't celebrate it. But I also had learned by then that in this case, the girls or the women, or any group struggling to claim their place at a table that has not previously had a place for them, again, not necessarily for any pernicious or evil reasons, but that's just the way it was, are usually really bad at claiming such respect or recognition. One reason is because they're genuinely grateful to be there. It's an incredible opportunity, and it really is. As I said, it was really fun to be part of all this, as it was really fun to be part of it all at Yale. But also for fear of being judged as ungrateful or whiny or abrasive or too demanding. All those words that at least half this audience knows way too well, right? Okay. And it's working within those constraints, the desire to be grateful and to celebrate what you've done while still struggling to get what you deserve. I mean, Hill wasn't actually doing us all a favor by inviting us here. I mean, they were to some, but we were also doing them a favor by coming. Yeah, getting you all here was a really wonderful thing for Hill. But even talking about this morning makes me a little nervous. But I think it's really important because it's also really part of the story. The pioneers here, all these amazing women, we need to be grateful for their success and the joy they found and shared with all of us, but also understand their perseverance. Looking at Courtney right here. It wasn't always girls' soccer. We played soccer. They played soccer. We were playing elite level field hockey in a swamp up there, people. Right? Yeah. Now, that wasn't anybody's fault. I mean, who knew from field hockey, right? At the Hill School. And we did finally get a grass pitch, and eventually we got a turf pitch, but it only took, 20 years or something like that, yeah? We had several hundred girls on the far fields every afternoon with 3 porta potties for 17 years. And there were times you're just like, well, female anatomy and physiology is such that actually 3 porta potties is kind of problematic. But but it gets exhausting to do that. The girls struggling to get their, and they did. They had to speak up about the fact that, and again, we had to change understandings of things. What had been an acceptable menu for a pack-out dinner for the football team was not really meeting the needs of the field hockey team. I'm looking right at some black, they didn't want to eat the same things. And we had to you had to renegotiate this stuff. And it gets really exhausting sometimes. Uniforms, girls' uniforms are different. They use locker rooms differently. It goes on and on and on. What? Yes. And sweaters, yes, the sweaters, right. And yet, to do that felt, again, you were being negative. That was a problem. At least we had fields up there. Can you imagine what the negotiations were like for court time and ice time? As we suddenly had to change, we had all these other teams, and they had to find space for them. Without hurting the existing programs, we had to somehow make it all work. That takes a lot of time and negotiation. And sometimes people get frustrated and they maybe even lose their tempers and even, God forbid, raise their voices. But that's also what change entails. It then changes a willingness to engage and to ask and to raise those expectations and to fight for them. And, I know this is now in the past. I'm counting on it, but it's the heartbreaking. The girls worked so hard, they were so good, and they got a lot of recognition. I love those stories last night of all the support they got. But the heartbreaking, there's 4 times in my life at Hill, I've watched the faces of a triumphant girls team bringing their new trophy to lunch in the dining hall, all excited about presenting it to the school, only to be forgotten, not called on by the people. Somebody up at the podium who was eloquently praising the noble losing efforts of one of the boys' teams that previous weekend. And forgotten isn't even the right word. because you can't forget what you don't recognize. The fact that the girls had just won the Maple Championship in field hockey or soccer was like, just hadn't quite registered quite enough to get the mention it did. I don't think that's going to happen again, but it has happened. And that's also part of what these women in the audience lived with. Some of, it took time. My point here is not to deny or denigrate the triumphs, nor am I trying to cast blame. I'm just trying to remind you all that what Hill has done over the last 26 years of coeducation is remarkable. And the Hill athletic story is triumphant one, and it is and it deserves all of the recognition we're giving it, but it didn't happen magically. It took effort, and it took some struggle and some effort on the part of a lot of people, starting with the girls themselves, willing to say, this isn't working for us. We need this. We need this. We need these things differently. And they did it. So we have a lot to honor and celebrate. What we most have to honor and celebrate, aside from winning, which really matters to me. My Beth could tell you I'm really bad at losing because I didn't do much of it in high school. Because we need to learn from it. Give ourselves credit for the fact of how much we really have accomplished at Hill. Because it's been a lot of work as well. When we talked about athletics last night, it was all hard work, work ethic, right? Yeah, that's right. That's the same thing that brings about change. It's a lot of work. And sometimes it doesn't feel good any more than running sprints does. You just have to keep at it. So, as you guys know, in addition to doing some coaching, I've done some teaching here over the last 25 years and served as academic dean for 8 of them. My title changed in the middle of that. We always were changing. I was director of studies and then magically was academic dean. But I'm going to leave you all with a summary lesson and an assignment going forward. The lesson is this: change is hard. It's exhausting, it's never complete, and it's never completely clean. You never accomplish everything you want to. But it is possible, and it does happen. And when the ends are honorable and worthy, there are few efforts more satisfying. So never give up, never give in, and keep going there. That's the lesson. This is the assignment. This is the Hill, 25 years on. An institution grounded in integrity. Whatsoever things are true is literally written in stone in our chapel. It's also grounded in intellectual and creative excellence that celebrates the life of the mind and the creative spirit. We don't just honor elite athletes, but elite scholars, artists, musicians, and elite character. That's what the Hill is. That's what it's been about for its history. So in a world of 2023, where we all know, those of us involved in youth sports know, we are in something of a state of crisis, I would say, where things are intense, where we've got 6-year-olds playing soccer 12 months a year, where we've got, sophomores committing to verbal commits, and the craziness of it all. A lot of benefit to it, but it's a lot. I think Hill is in a particularly strong place to try to negotiate and figure out what the healthy balance that athletics should play in the optimal educational program is something that's begging right now to be examined, recalibrated, and reinforced. And I think I would like the Hill to provide the leadership required to show others, as we've so often taken the lead in so many areas, that can show others the way forward and to provide a healthy balance for our students' lives and celebrate excellence in all things, not just athletics. So, go Hill. But I would also remind you that we play games because they're fun. That's why we should play them. That's why we love it. And it's a lot more fun, as I said, to win. So let's go have some fun on the far fields. And thank you all very much for listening this morning.
There we go. All right, good afternoon, or I guess morning still. Thank you so much, Doc Malone, for that wonderful keynote address. My name is Kaylin Volmuth. I am the class of 2011.
And I'm Allie Jacobs Greenlee, class of 2007.
And we are proud board members of the Hill Alumni Society. We would like to extend our congratulations and gratitude to all the women in Hill athletics, both here today and celebrating at home. As former Hill student athletes ourselves, it's an honor to be a part of this momentous occasion. We hope to add to the spirit of celebration and recognition for all your trailblazing efforts and dedication to the Hill as student athletes, coaches, and alumni. This year, the Hill is celebrating 25 years of co-education and 10 years since founding the Hill Alumni Society by members of the first classes of female graduates and pioneers.
Since 2013, our HAS mission is to unite a forward-thinking community of strong women joined together by our common history and made stronger by our diverse paths and experiences. The Alumni Society provides various channels for engagement and updates via Instagram and YouTube, as well as periodical newsletters and representation at all major Hill events. These platforms offer opportunities to stay connected and informed about the experiences and accomplishments of fellow Hill alumni and celebrate our short but strong history of achievements both in person and virtually. We encourage you all to follow our Instagram at Hill Alumni. By staying connected, we can continue to build a strong and vibrant community that empowers women of the Hill to thrive in all aspects of life. Once again, thank you to all of you in the room who have supported women's athletics at the Hill since 1998 and beyond. And best of luck today to all of our student athletes as they face Lawrenceville on the playing field. Go Hill.
This morning, we all gathered here, inspired by Dr. Malone's wisdom, to honor the pioneering spirit that brought female athletes to the Hill School. To the Hill School's fields, courts, pool, rink, and track 25 years ago. Quite a few of the trailblazing women who shaped the landscape of the Hill School are here with us today. In 1998, when Hill embarked on the coeducation journey, our identity was forever changed. And so, it's with a profound sense of pride that I stand before you today to officially announce the celebration of the 25th year of coeducation at the Hill School. Please mark May 3rd to May 5th on your calendar. The weekend will be filled with events and activities that will highlight the achievements and stories of our female alumni, while also showcasing the incredible journey of the past 25 years. It will be an opportunity for our Hill community to come together to honor the progress we have made, while also acknowledging the challenges we have overcome. The transformative impact that coeducation has had on the Hill is a milestone that deserves one epic celebration. I invite each and every one of you to join us as we shine a light on the courage of the early women who paved the way for over 1,000 females who've now followed in their brave footsteps. I encourage you all to participate in the upcoming events, to listen to the stories of alumni, and to find the courage to share your own. Your involvement will not only help us appreciate how far we've come, but will also inspire us to continue building an even stronger Hill community for the future. Thank you, and let the celebration begin.